Welcome to r/NeighborsFromH. In this subreddit, people share stories about their crazy neighbors. Before we start, if you're new to my channel, please don't forget to click subscribe to join our friendly community. And now, without wasting any more time, let's dive right in. My nutjob neighbor is attempting to frame me twice in 7 days, and I am concerned about what she might be cooking up next. Ontario, Canada. The police have visited my house twice in the past 7 days to accuse me of crimes against this crazy woman across the street that are all fabricated from her imagination. The first day I was woken out of bed at 11:15 p.m. to be accused of hiding in the ditch with camouflage and a camera, trying to get photos of her at home and shining bright lights and laser beams in the direction of her home and flashing lights inside my own house. I told them that none of that ever happened and they don't believe me. Only 7 days later, the police returned with all new accusations. Someone has stolen a chainsaw from one of my close neighbors, and for some reason I am suspect number 1. They did not tell me whose shed it was, but I did see the police back at Crazy Lady's house 2 days ago, so I am fairly sure I'm truly being targeted. I feel the police give her undue credibility because she's very wealthy and I am very poor. What would you guys advise the OP to do in that situation? Someone in the comments suggested to install security cameras that point outside of her property, even though it might not be legal to film the whole street. Disgruntled neighbor has installed a strobe light to stop epileptic kids from using a school bus stop. To give some context on where we live, we are in a small neighborhood of about 5 homes. It's a very cul-de-sac area in the middle of farmland. There aren't other homes or buildings for about 2 miles. I have 3 young elementary-aged children that all have a very serious case of epilepsy. It does not take much to cause an episode. By some luck, 2 of our neighbors' kids also have epilepsy and are also around the same age as our kids. For the past few years, they have been able to successfully group together and go to the end of our community to catch the bus. The family who used to own the house at the street recently moved out, and there's a new owner who has been an absolute hell to everyone. From the second day on, he has harassed our kids, telling them to get off his property even though they were technically on a public road. Through the grapevines, he somehow learned that a majority of the kids were epileptic and has installed strobe lights in his front lawn. These are very powerful, very fast lights that you cannot avoid walking by. We have contacted the police and they won't even come out to talk to the guy. We have contacted the school to see if they could come into the neighborhood to pick up our kids, and they really cannot. The bus just couldn't drive into our neighborhood and easily back out. They have to be picked up on the street. What can we do? I mean, forgive me if I'm wrong, but to be honest, shouldn't you just go to the police or to the sheriff and tell them that some crazy person is trying to harm your children by inducing seizures in them? And as all of you probably know, seizures are something extremely serious, especially in young children. But what would you guys do in that situation? Neighbor threatening to sue over wheelchair ramp. My boyfriend has mobility issues and uses either a wheelchair or crutches depending on his pain levels. I've done a lot of home improvement projects to ensure he can get around my house easily, including a wheelchair ramp up to my front door. My front door is really recessed from the street due to my lawn and hidden by my porch, so the ramp is not very visible from the street. I painted it to match the house as well. Few months ago, a new family moved across the street and the wife's never been very friendly with me like my other neighbors are, which I chalked up to her being shy or whatever. However, recently I got a note taped up to my door that said she's going to sue if I don't take the ramp down, as it's an eyesore and reduces curbside value. I have no idea what she means, since you cannot see the thing unless you know what to look for and really get up in my property, as confirmed by neighbors and friends. She refused to answer the door when I went over to talk to her about it. I'm trying not to lose my temper over this, but it's hard. There's been many times my boyfriend has been screwed over by so-called handicap accessible places. I don't want my home to be one of them. Does she have any sort of case? I'm in Washington. It's not like I'm an expert on American law, but by using common sense, I would say if you come to someone else's property uninvited, that's first of all trespassing, so you have no business being there anyway. Therefore, she has no case at all. But please correct me if I'm wrong. Bored middle-aged neighbor has been giving me a hard time because I dress like a hussy. Is that a crime? I have been accused of a litany of sexual crimes, some against children, because of the way I dress. My neighbor is so adamant about all of this, she's got me a bit worried. About a month ago, I moved in with my sister and her boyfriend into a neighborhood that is mostly families. I did not expect any trouble. My first introduction to this woman, let's call her Karen, was my first week here. I went to check the mail and I was not wearing a bra. I had on a baggy t-shirt and basketball shorts, though. Karen is one of those southern women who spend all day in their yards pretending to garden but are really spying on their neighbors. You know the type. She waved at me and I waved back, trying to be pleasant. She came at me, I thought to make a proper introduction or whatever, but she started lecturing me about not having on a bra. It was creepy and weird, and I'm not at all well endowed. I go without frequently, and so far no one seems to pick up on it. But not Karen. Karen urged me to think of her children and Jesus, who was always watching, and my parents, bless their hearts, she knows they raised me better than this. It was so goddamn weird, I felt like laughing in her face, but I did not want there to be issues, so I said I would be more diligent in the future, and Karen went about her business. Well, wearing a bra was not good enough for Karen. Y'all, oh no, not only is blasting my nips lewd, so are regular women's shorts and any form-fitting type of bottoms, even if they cover my sinful legs. Karen seems to have an issue with the lower half of my body. While my breasts are small and humble, I am aesthetic from the waist down. The second time Karen confronted me, her brood was playing in the street and any semblance of pleasantness was gone. She threatened to call the police on me for indecent exposure in front of her children, insinuated I got off on arousing her tween boys, called me a hussy, a Jezebel, and that I needed Jesus, because I was wearing jean shorts. We live in a nice area, lots of woods, by lakes and parks, and I like to go out for walks, but it seems every time I step foot out of my door, there is effing Karen making snide remarks, outright threatening to call the police or gossiping with other bored housewives. It's getting annoying. This is in Florida, by the way. Well, if you ask me, unfortunately, OP probably cannot do much, because you cannot really stop her from being annoying, but you don't have to engage with her. And by the way, before I forget, please don't forget to post some stars in the comments and like the video if you want to support me. All support is very much appreciated and needed. Thank you so much. Downstairs neighbors would not turn down music, nuke them from orbit. I was inspired by a recent post to tell my own bad neighbor story. Can't think of a better place to post it. Flashback to 2014 or so. I moved out on my own in 2013 and moved into an old house converted into a 2-floor apartment directly across from my future in-laws. The downstairs neighbors were loud, blaring music at all hours, yes, all of the hours, would not cut the grass or take out the trash on our shared schedule. Crappy neighbors, but never bothered me directly. The guy was pretty chill when sober and would turn the music down a little when I texted him. He was okay until his girlfriend moved in. Now add shouting matches to the mix and all of a sudden my request to turn down the music makes him turn it up. I can barely walk on my super thin floor without her banging on the ceiling with a broom. I was okay since I am a heavy sleeper and could sleep through anything. My wife moved in and I quickly found out that she is quite the opposite. Fan on turned at a certain angle in the doorway of the bathroom, door closed halfway, blackout curtains with them taped to the wall so zero light comes through, zero sounds other than the fan, you get the idea. I told her that we cannot expect them to remain silent when she's ready for bed, we need to be reasonable, but the wall rattling music needs to stop during the night. She hated it during the day, but I told her there's nothing we can do then, so she would go to her parents' house a lot during the day. I talked to neighbor guy, he said, "Yeah man, that's cool." But it turns out the girlfriend was not having it and his attitude then changed to, "Yeah well, it's our house, so you can go F yourself if you think you can tell us what to do, and you can move out if you don't like it." Something definitely had to change once she was pregnant and then the baby came. So I did the only thing I could do. I fought fire with fire and maliciously complied with the law to the T. I could only report them for noise after 11 PM. I now forget the morning hour when the noise could start, but I believe it was 9 AM. My dad has these huge old concert speakers in his garage, professional grade, black leather bound, 5 feet tall and 3 feet wide, and a pretty nice vintage stereo/amp. He has two, but my apartment was so small I sadly only had room for one. We replaced our coffee table with this thing laid face down onto our thin office carpet. Tired of his crap tunes, I tested this Geneva Convention breaking device when they were not home. Holy cow! I had to take everything down from tables, counters and shelves because they would shake off. I prepared audio files to feed the stereo. I was giddy like a kid with a new Christmas toy. I turned it on when I left for work and got my wife up to send her to her parents. I came home from work and hung out at her parents until it was close to bedtime. They resisted for 3 days. On day 2, I found a pile of manure on my doorstep, but it did not faze me. I cycled between sine/saw/square waves in clashing chords, marching music, Washington Post march on loop, preaching clips. They weren't just atheist but outspoken anti-Christian, so it was a must. The most stupid songs you could think of. Captain Planet theme song, chicken dance, etc. This poor old house rattled in ways I did not think possible. The vibrations from the sine wave would make your vision blur. I eventually got a text from him that read, "Sorry man, you can stop now." I did not. He needed a few more days to let it sink in. Plus, I had so much fun putting it together. They complained to the police and the landlord. There was nothing they could do since I was not doing anything wrong. I did not even hear music during the time of peace to follow. It was so quiet. They would build up their courage and try again every few weeks when I was not home, but my wife was. I then showed her how to tame the beast so she could let it loose while I was away. I had to give them a spanking every now and then, but they learned. They were so happy when we moved out. Wow, that was an incredibly satisfying story if you ask me, and personally, I'm a big fan of fighting fire with fire. How about you guys? What do you do when you get into an argument with someone? Do you fight fire with fire? Or are you the smarter one, so to say, who doesn't really participate? Neighbor did not like my front yard, used chemicals to kill everything while I was on holiday. I moved into my new home about a year ago. The front yard is about 350 square feet and has, or rather had, a grass field and some flowering plants/ornamental grasses next to the house. Ever since I started living there, the neighbor has been giving me hell about the front yard. He insisted I did not maintain it well enough and should just pave it over or hire a landscaping service to do the maintenance. Now I must admit the front yard was indeed neglected, so there was weed growing there as well. I recently went on a trip and when I got home I found my entire front yard dead or dying. When I asked the neighbor about this, he admitted he sprayed something all over the place to get rid of the weeds. Obviously, it did not kill just the weeds. What should I do now? Can I get some compensation for this? Location, California. What would you guys suggest in that situation? I mean, isn't that a form of trespassing? And also damaging property, so I think you could easily go to the police, but correct me if I'm wrong. Neighbor is shit-bombing my front yard. Original post, hey all, I have a shitty situation here that I'm hoping to get some advice about. This is in Idaho. My neighbor is shit-bombing my front yard. A neighbor bought a house across the street about 6 months ago. A few weeks back, I was working in the garage when I saw him take his dog directly across the street into my front yard. He let it pee in my yard and then walked straight home. He did not notice me. My garage is set up as a shop and is pretty busy, and the garage door is up a lot, but this piqued my interest because it's goddamn weird. Now, my wife and I have a dog, so there are a few dog droppings from her that we pick up on a regular basis. My wife had been doing the duty recently, so I asked her if there are more piles than normal. Sure enough, she said there had been a ton for a while now. She figured it was a-holes walking their dogs and letting them crap on our lawn. I figured it was our new weirdo neighbor. It happened again around a week later. I was in the garage as the neighbor took his dog into our lawn. This time the dog dropped the deuce and he started to walk away without picking it up. I called out to him, asking him if he needs a plastic bag to pick up after his dog, and he avoided eye contact and scurried back home. I went across the street and knocked on his door. He did not answer, so we set up a security camera to discreetly watch the front lawn, and I kept an eye out for when he was next out in his yard so I could talk to him. I reviewed the footage over the next few days, and sure enough, he was consistently taking his dog to do the deed in our yard. Why our yard? No clue. We have never had any interaction with this guy whatsoever. The next time I saw him walking to his car, I confronted him. I simply told him that I knew he was taking his dog to shit in our yard, and if I caught him doing it again, I would call the police to report him for trespassing. He denied doing it, claiming it must be other neighbors, got in his car and drove away with me standing in his driveway. So I review the footage from the last few days. Dude is not walking his dog into my yard anymore, he's letting the dog shit in his yard. He then scoops it up, walks it across the street and tosses it into my yard with a shovel. What the absolute F. I mean, seriously, I got no words for that neighbor. But I think in Germany actually you would get in pretty big trouble, because as far as I know, it is actually regulated by law that you have to pick up the droppings of your dog. I'm wondering if a law like that exists in the US as well. Act like the neighbor from hell and threaten my grandparents? Enjoy losing your job and house. And by the way, sorry guys if you can hear that rain outside my window, I'm not sure, but it seems like a damn thunderstorm just started. So, oh by the way, these next two stories are gonna be from r/cringe, just to mix it up and have a few funny stories in here as well. I hope you don't mind. So, when I was 19, I did a legal internship, prosecution. Part of my internship involved courtroom observation, which was less exciting than the movies might lead you to believe, but still pretty cool. I had been interning there for about a month when this happened. I had talked to the judge on several occasions just to say hello, and she had seen me deliver evidence to the attorneys, help with some paperwork and observe more or less every day. There was a case about possession of indecent movies with children, super creepy defendant, until the 16-year-old victim came in to be questioned. The jury thought that I was her and kept throwing me pitying looks, but they figured it out once she gave her testimony and I delivered some folders to the attorneys. Then came the sentencing hearing. The judge wanted to give her thoughts on the matter, so she told the defendant to clean up his act, and then she looked me dead in the eyes and said, "As for you, I hope you can get counseling to overcome this traumatic experience." I told her, "I'm not the victim." She blinked at me and started to tell me that I was right and I was a survivor, but then it hit her, "Oh, you're the intern." Yep. Makes you wonder if that in any way, shape or form affected his judgment. But I guess even judges are just humans. I just told my boss I have tons of sex. About 10 minutes ago, I was walking by my boss's office and he yelled out to me, "Hey man, do you got a sec?" Trying to keep it casual, I responded with, "Yeah man, I have tons of sex," without realizing how that would sound. His head just dropped and he said, "Never mind," and that it's not that important. 2019 is off to a great start. Edit, I'm a college student working on campus and he actually thought I was trying to brag about myself. I don't think it shamed him though, as he had just had his 4th kid. Edit number 2, just because you've heard it as a joke before does not mean it cannot happen in real life, but if saying that makes you feel better about yourself, then go for it. And eventually we did talk and he told me to stop coming into the building on days that the building is closed. But I got 4 months left till I graduate, so we will see about that. And that light-hearted little story is unfortunately the last one for today. I hope you enjoyed the content. And as usual, I hope you also have a fantastic day and I see you again tomorrow. Ripe signing off.